Welcome back, everyone. Today we will be reading Book 5, so let's get into it. Book 5. Hermes is sent to Calypso's island. Odysseus makes a raft and is carried to the coast of Scheria. Dawn rose from her bed beside old Tithonus, bringing light for mortals and immortals both, and the gods came to their morning session. There, in his place, was Zeus Almighty, thunderer in the heights, and Athena made them a speech about Odysseus and his troubles, for she was concerned that he still remained in captivity. Father Zeus, and all you gods everlasting and blessed, from this time forth let no sceptred king be kind and gentle, let none have justice in his heart. Let him always be harsh and act the tyrant. For none of his subjects remembers that noble prince Odysseus, who ruled them like a kind father. Now he lies wretched and miserable, Calypso's prisoner in her island, and he cannot return to his native land, for he has no men and no galleys to carry him over the broad back of the sea. And now again they want to murder his beloved son, who has gone to Pylos and to Lacedaemon to find out news of his father. They are only waiting for his return. Zeus Cloud-gatherer answered, My dear child, what in heaven do you mean by that? Was not the whole thing your own notion? Didn't you want him to come home that way and take his vengeance? As for Telemachus, you can easily manage to bring him back safe and sound, and let the plotters just sail home again. Then he called to his son Hermes and said, Hermes, you are my messenger, and here is an errand for you. Go and declare to Calypso our unchangeable will that Odysseus shall return after all his troubles. But no god shall go with him, and no mortal man. He shall build a raft, and a hard voyage he shall have, until after 20 days he shall come to land on Scheria, the rich domain of our own kinsmen, the Phaeacians. They shall honor him like a god in the kindness of their hearts, and they shall escort him in one of their ships to his native land. They shall give him plenty of gold and bronze and heaps of fine clothing, more indeed than he could have brought from Troy as his share of the spoils, if he had come home without mishap. For this is how he is destined to return to his tall house and his native land, and to see his friends once more. The king's messenger was ready, and he had been when he brought death to the watcher Argos. He put on his fine shoes, those golden incorruptible shoes, which used to carry him over moist and dry to the ends of the earth, swift as the breath of the winds. He took up the staff, which lays a spell on men's eyes if he wills, or wakens the sleeping. Holding this, Argiphantes flew away swift and strong. One step on Pieria, and he swooped from the upper air upon the deep. Then he skimmed the waves like a seagull, which hunts fish in the dangerous inlets of the barren sea, and dives into the brine with folded wings. Such was the shape of Hermes as he rode on the rippling waves. When at last he came to that far-off island, he left the blue sea and passed over the land until he reached the great cave where Calypso lived. He found her in the cave, with her beautiful hair flowing over her shoulders. A great fire blazed on the hearth, and the burning logs of cedar and juniper wafted their fragrant scent far over the island. Calypso sat within by her room, singing in a lovely voice and shooting her golden shuttle to and fro. A thick coppice of trees grew round the cave, alder and aspen and sweet-smelling cypress. There the birds would sail to rest on their outspread wings, owls and falcons and long-tongued sea ravens who busy themselves about the waters. Over the gaping mouth of the cave trailed a luxuriant grapevine with clusters of ripe fruit, and 4 rills of clear water ran in a row close together, winding over the ground. Beyond were soft meadows thick with violets and wild celery. That was a sight to gladden the very gods. King's messenger Argiphantes stood still and gazed about him with deep content. Then he went into the cave, and Calypso knew him as soon as she saw him, for all those of the divine race know one another when they meet, even if they live a long way off. But Odysseus was not there. He was sitting in his usual place on the shore, wearing out his soul with lamentation and tears. Calypso gave him greeting. "My dear Hermes, this is an honor. With your golden rod and all, what has brought you here? You do not often pay me a visit, but you are heartily welcome. Tell me what you want. I am glad to do it if I can, and if it is doable. But do come in and let me entertain my guest." With these words she led him to a seat that shone with diligent polishing, and set a table beside him with a dish of ambrosia and a cup of red nectar. The royal messenger ate, he drank, he enjoyed a hearty meal, and then he answered her question. "You ask me what brings me here, as one god to another. Very well. I will tell you the whole story as you ask. Zeus sent me here. I did not want to come here. Who would want to travel all that distance over the salt water? No end to it. And no city of mortals anywhere near to provide a god with sacrifice and a handsome feast. But no god can shirk or battle the will of Zeus Almighty. That is quite impossible. He says there's a man here, one of those who were 9 years fighting before Priam's town, and the most unlucky of them all. It took them 10 years to capture that city. Then they set out for home. But on the way they offended Athena, and she raised a bad wind and a heavy sea against him. All his good comrades were drowned, but he, as it seems, was carried here by winds and waters. That's the man, and the orders are to send him away at once, for it is not his fate to perish in this place far from his friends. It is decreed that he shall see his friends again, and return to his tall house and his native land." Calypso shivered, and she spoke her mind plainly. "A hard-hearted lot you are, you gods, and as jealous can be. Why are you shocked if a goddess sleeps with a man and makes no secret of it, when she happens to find one she could love as a husband? It is always the same. When blushing Dawn chose Orion, all you gods were shocked. You lived as you like yourselves, but you would not rest until Artemides let fly one of her gentle bolts and killed him in Ortygia. Her holiness on that golden throne. Then Demeter had a fancy for Iasion, and pleased herself, made her love bed on the furrows of the ploughland. Zeus heard of it in no time, and killed him dead with a fiery thunderbolt. So you gods are all shocked at me now because there's a mortal man with me. I saved the man when he was straddling across a ship's keel, all by himself, after Zeus had sent another fiery thunderbolt at him and smashed the ship to pieces in the middle of the sea. All his crew were drowned, and the winds carried him here. I loved him and cherished him, and I did think I would make him immortal like myself. But since it is impossible for any god to shirk or baffle the will of Zeus Almighty, let him go to the devil over the barren sea, if that is the command of his mightiness. I will not give him a passage home. I have no ships and no sailors to carry him over the broad back of the sea, but I will gladly advise him and help him to get home. Hermes answered, All right, let him go now, and don't forget the wrath of God, or he may be angry with you one fine day. So Argiphantes departed, having delivered his message, and Calypso went in search of Odysseus. She found him sitting upon the shore. The tears were never dry in his eyes. Life, with its sweetness, was slowly trickling away. He cared for her no longer. At night, he was forced to sleep by her side in the cave, although the love was all on her part, and he spent the days sitting upon the rocks or the sands, staring at the barren sea and sorrowing. Calypso came up to him and said, Poor old fellow, please don't sit here lamenting any more. Don't let yourself pine away like this. I'm going to send you off at once, and glad to do it. Come along, cut down trees, hew them into shape, make a good broad raft. You can lay planks across it, and it shall carry you over the misty sea. I will provide you with bread, water, red wine, as much as you like. You need not starve. I'll give you plenty of clothes and send a fair wind behind you to bring you home safe and sound. If it so please the gods who rule the broad heavens, who are stronger than I am both to will and to do. As she said this, the ever-patient man shivered, and he said plainly, I am sure there is something else in your mind, goddess, and no kind send-off for me, when you tell me to cross the great gulf of the sea on a raft. That is a difficult and dangerous thing even for well-built ships, although they sail swiftly enough when they are blessed with a good wind from heaven. And I should not care to embark on a raft without your good will, not unless you could bring yourself to swear a solemn oath that you will not work some secret mischief against me. The beautiful goddess smiled and stroked him with her hand, saying, You are a wicked man, always wide awake, or you would never have thought of such a thing. Now then, I swear by heaven above and by earth beneath, and the pouring force of Styx, that is the most awful oath of the blessed gods. I will work no secret mischief against you. No, I mean what I say. I will be as careful for you as I should be for myself in the same need. I know what is fair and right. My heart is not made of iron, and I am really sorry for you. Then she led him briskly to the great cave. They went in together, the goddess and the man. He took the seat which Hermes had just left. She laid the table with food and drink, everything which mortal man can eat, and sat opposite, while the maids brought her nectar and ambrosia. They took what they wanted, and when they had a good meal, the beautiful Calypso spoke first. Prince Odysseus, Laertides, now is the time to show your famous cleverness. So you want to go home at once? Well, I wish you luck all the same. If you knew what troubles you will have before you get to Ithaca, you would stay where you are and keep this house with me and be immortal. However much you might want to see your wife, whom you long for day in and day out. Is she prettier than me? I think not. I don't think it likely that a mortal woman would set herself up as a model of beauty against a goddess. Odysseus knew what to say to that, and he answered at once, Gracious goddess, don't be cross with me. I know all that as well as you do. My wife is nothing compared to you for beauty. I can see that for myself. She is mortal, you are immortal, and never grow old. But even so, I long for the day of my homecoming, and if some god wrecks me again on the deep, I will endure it, for I have a patient mind. I have suffered already many troubles and hardships in battle and tempest. This will be only one more." As he spoke, the sun went down and the darkness came, and these two lay down in the corner of the lofty cave and enjoyed their love together. When dawn showed her rosy fingers through the mists, Odysseus put on tunic and cloak, and the nymph a silvery wrap, with a golden girdle under it round the hips, and a veil over her head. Then she began to help Odysseus in his work. She gave him a good handy axe of bronze, double-edged, with a well-fitted handle of olive wood, and in adze with adze, with a smooth shaft, and led him to the end of the island. There was a coppice of tall trees, long since dry and sapless and easy to float, alder and aspen and pine trees high as the sky. When she had shown him the trees, Calypso went back and he began to fell them. He worked fast and soon cut down 20 trees, then trimmed them with the axe, shaped them neatly, and made them true to the line. Then Calypso brought him a boring tool, and he bored holes and fitted the spars together, making them fast with pegs and joints. He made his craft as wide as a skillful shipwright would plan out the hull of a bluff ketch. He fixed ribs along the sides and decking planks above, and finished off with copings along the ribs. He set a mast in her and fitted a yard upon it, and he made also a steering oar to keep her straight. All round he ran bulwarks of wattle to keep the water out, and threw brushwood into the bottom. Then Calypso brought him cloth to use for a sail, and he made that too. Stays and halyards and sheets he made fast in their places, and dragged her down to the shore on rollers. In 4 days he had finished the whole, and in the 5th Calypso saw him off, after she had bathed him and clothed him in garments scented with juniper. She did not forget a skin of red wine, and another large one full of water, with provisions in a bag, tasty stuff and plenty of it. And she sent him a fair wind, fairly and soft. Odysseus was glad of that wind as he set his sail, and sat by the stern oar steering like a seaman. No sleep fell on his eyes, but he watched the Pleiades, and the late-setting wagoner, and the bear, or the wagon, as some call it, which wheels around and round where it is, watching Orion, and alone of them all never takes a bath in the ocean. Calypso had warned him to keep the bear on his left hand as he sailed over the sea. 17 days he sailed over the sea, and on the 18th day he approached the nearest point of the Phaeacian country, with its shady uplands. The island looked like a great shield lying upon the misty deep. But the Earthshaker was now on his way back from the Ethiopians, and caught sight of him in the distance from the Solomon Hills. He fell into a royal rage and shook his head as he cried out, "Damn it all! The gods have changed their minds about Odysseus, as soon as I was out of the way. And there he is close to Phaeacia, where he is fated to find the end of the tribulations which afflict him, but I promise that I will yet give him a good run of bad luck." Then he gathered the clouds and stirred up the deep with his trident. He roused all the tempestuous winds, and covered in clouds both land and sea. Night rushed down from the heavens. East wind and south wind dashed together. West wind blowing hard, and north wind from the cold heights, rolling up great billows. Odysseus felt his knees tremble and his heart fail, and in despair he spoke to his own strong spirit. "How unlucky I am! What will be the end of all this? I fear what the goddess said was true. She said I was to have trouble in full measure before I could see my native land. And here it is, all coming true. What clouds are these that Zeus has brought over the broad heavens? How he has stirred up the deep, how all the winds come sweeping upon me. Now my destruction's a safe thing. Thrice blessed were my countrymen, 4 times blessed indeed, who perished on the field before Troy to please the royal house of Atreus. I wish I had died there, and found my fate on that day when a host of enemies were casting their sharp spears at me over the dead body of Achilles. Then I should have had burial, and my countrymen would have spread my fame. Now I am doomed to die an ignominious death." As he said this, a great wave rolled up towering above him and drove his vessel round. He lost hold of the steering oar and fell out into the water. The mast snapped in the middle as the fearful tempest of warring winds fell upon it. Sail and yard were thrown from the wreck. He was kept long under water, and he could not get clear, for his clothes weighed him down. But at last he came up, spitting the bitter brine out of his mouth, while it ran down streaming off his head. For all this, he did not forget his raft, exhausted as he was, but he made a dash after it through the seas, and caught hold, and sat in the middle to save his life if he could. Round and round it went on the waves, as the north wind in autumn rolls up lumps of thistles, and carries them over the fields, so that winds blew the raft round and round over the water. Now the south wind tossed it to the north wind, now the east wind passed it to the west wind in turn. But Ino saw him. She was a daughter of Cadmos, and a beautiful creature, once a mortal who spoke with human voice. Now she is Leucothea, the white sea goddess, to whom the gods have given that honor in the salt depths. She pitied Odysseus as he was buffeted about in the miserable way. Like a great shearwater, she rose on the wing from the waves and perched on the wreck. She said, "Poor Odysseus, you're odd, I see. True to your name, your Odyssey, true to your name. Why does Poseidon Earthshaker knock you about in this monstrous way and persecute you so much? But he will never destroy you, although that is what he wants to do. Well, this is my advice, and I think you have sense enough to take it. Strip off your clothes and let the raft go roaming. Take to the sea and swim, and you may get your grip on Phaeacian land, since it is ordained that you shall find safety there. Here, take this veil and stretch it under your chest. It is a divine thing, and while you have it there is no fear that you will drown or come to any harm. When you have your hands fast on the land, take it off and throw it back into the sea as far as you can, but turn your face away as you do it." Then the goddess gave him the veil, and dived back herself into the sea, like a great shearwater, and the dark waves covered her. But Odysseus was left in doubt. How much he had endured patiently already, and he was angry as he said to himself, "More trouble for me. I can't help thinking that some god or other is weaving another snare. When she tells me to leave the raft, at all events I wouldn't do it yet. She said I should get ashore there, but the land was a long way off when I caught sight of it. Well, I know what I'll do. This seems the best thing. As long as these sticks hold together, I'll stick to them and make the best of my hard luck. But if the sea smashes them up, I'll swim for it, since I cannot see anything better to do. While these thoughts were passing through his mind, Poseidon Earthshaker brought up another great wave, a terrible great mass that curved over him and drove him along. Planks and spars were scattered as a strong wind catches a heap of dry straw and scatters it over the ground. Odysseus straddled across one spar as if he were riding a horse and stripped off his clothes, all he had left of the gifts of kind Calypso. He fastened the veil under his chest and fell flat on the water, with arms spread abroad to swim. The mighty Earthshaker saw him and nodded his head as he said to himself, "That's right. You have had a good lot of troubles already, and now you may go tossing about on the water and get ashore if you can. Even if you get there, I don't think you will be able to complain of having less than your share of trouble." With these words, he whipped up his horses. They shook their manes and carried him to Agai, where his famous palace was. Now it was the turn of Athena, the daughter of Zeus, and this was her plan. She tied up the courses of all the other winds and commanded them to rest and be quiet. But she sent a steady wind from the north and broke down the waves in front of Odysseus, that he might make his way to Phaeacia and save himself alive. After that, he tossed about for 2 nights and 2 days on the rolling waves, always looking for death. But the 3rd day broke with rosy streaks of dawn, and when the light was full, the wind fell, and there came a breathless calm. Odysseus lifted high on a great swell, took a quick look around, and there, close by, he saw the land. As a father's life is welcomed to his children, when he has been lying tormented by some fell disease, and in his agony long drawn out the hateful hand of death has touched him, but God has given relief from his troubles. No less welcome to Odysseus was the sight of earth and trees, and he swam on, longing to feel his feet on solid ground. When he came near enough for a man's voice to carry, he could hear the dull sound of the sea breaking upon the rocks. The great waves were crashing against a rough coast and belching up terrific showers of spray, which covered the cliffs in a mist. For there was no harbor for a ship, and no roadstead, nothing but bluffs and crags and headlands along that shore. Then Odysseus felt his limbs grow weak, and his heart failed within him. Dauntless though he was disturbed, and said to himself, "My trouble is not yet over. Zeus has granted me to see the land which I never hoped to see. Now I have come to the end of my journey over all that immeasurable gulf, but there is no way to get out of the water. Sharp reefs outside, roaring surges all around, a smooth cliff running up straight with deep water along the shore, nowhere to stand on my 2 feet and find safety. If I try to get out, I suppose the swell will catch me and dash me on the sharp teeth of some rock. Then much good will it do me to try. If I swim along the coast on the chance of finding a bay and a sloping beach, I am afraid the gale may catch me again and carry me out into the deep sea, and that will be a bad job. Or luck may send me a monster out of the sea. Amphitrite is famous for monsters. I know this Earthshaker has an odd dislike for Odysseus." As these thoughts passed through his mind, the swell carried him against the rocky shore. Then his skin would have been torn off, all his bones broken, if Athena had not put a thought into his mind. He flung himself upon a rock and caught hold with both hands, and clung there, groaning, until the wave had passed on. That time he saved himself, but the backwash rolled upon him again and carried him far out into the sea. When you drag a squid out of its hole, you may see a lot of little stones sticking to the suckers. That is what his strong hands looked like, with rags of skin and flesh and bits of rock along the fingers. When the wave swallowed him up. And then Odysseus would have perished, fate or no fate, if Athena had not put prudence into his mind. He got clear of the line of breakers foaming upon the shore, and swam along outside, keeping his eye on the land, in case he could see a bay and a sloping beach. On he swam until he came opposite the mouth of a river, and glad he was to see it. That seemed a good place, as there were no rough stones, and it gave some shelter from the wind. He saw the river pouring into the sea, and prayed to the river god in his heart. Hear me, Lord, whoever thou art. How I have longed for thee, and now I pray to thee. Save me from Poseidon's threats. Pity a homeless man. Even the immortal gods might pity one who comes, as I come now, to thy stream and thy knees, after much tribulation. Have mercy upon me, Lord. I throw myself upon thee. Then the river stayed his flowing, and held back the wave, and made calm before him, and brought him safe into the mouth. He sank on his 2 knees, and let his strong arms fall, for the sea had worn him out. All his body was swollen, and the salt water bubbled from mouth and nostrils. Breathless and voiceless, he lay in a faint and awful weariness overcame him. When his breath came back by and by, and his spirit rallied again, the first thing he did was to unwind the goddess's veil. He dropped it into the river as it ran murmuring seawards, and the swell carried it back, until Ino quickly received it into her kind hands. Odysseus crawled up out of the river, and sank down on the rushes, and kissed Mother Earth. Then, deeply moved, he spoke to his own brave heart. And now, what will become of me? What will be the end of all this? If I keep watch all this wretched night by the riverside, I think hard frost and drenching dew together may be too much for me after that fainting fit. And the wind blows cold towards dawn. If I should climb the hill into the dark forest and lie down in a clump of bushes to have a good sleep and get rid of this chill and weariness, I am afraid I may be just something for wild beasts to eat and play with. But after thinking it over, the last plan seemed the best. So he entered a coppice, which he found close to the river, with a clear space round it. There he crawled under a couple of low trees which were growing close together out of one root, a wild garden olive, and a blackthorn. So thick and close they grew that no damp wind could blow through, nor could the sun send down his blazing rays, nor could rain penetrate. Odysseus crept into this thicket, and found there was plenty of room for a bed. So he scraped up the leaves with his bare hands, for there were plenty there, enough to shelter 2 or 3 men in the wildest winter weather. Imagine the delight of Odysseus when he saw this place after all his troubles. Down he lay in the middle, and heaped the leaves over his body. So there was Odysseus lying under the leaves like a smoldering brand which someone has buried under black ashes far away in the country, with no one living near. That is how he keeps the seed of fire. Or else he would have to go elsewhere for a light, and Athena shed sleep upon his eyes, and closed the 2 eyelids, that he might quickly rest from his weariness after sore tribulation. That's it for today. We'll see you guys next week with Book 6.